Hey girlfriend, welcome back to What. If you're anything like me, you have those moments when you think, why am I doing this again? Isn't this a little bit complicated? Maybe I should just go and get a little job and bring in some money, and that would be a lot simpler. I think we all have those moments. And to think about why we are actually doing this, I want to tell you a story. So I live in Wales now, and this is a story from this part of the world. It's an old story about King Arthur. So one day King Arthur and his companions were out hunting, and a deer crossed their path, and King Arthur said, okay, I'm going to chase this on my own. And he went off and he caught the deer and he chased it and he caught it and he shot at the arrow and killed it. And at that very moment, a knight all dressed in black stepped out of the undergrowth and said, aha, now that I have you on your own, I'm going to kill you. And King Arthur said, well, Black Knight, that's not very chivalrous of you. I'm here and I've just shot my last arrow. That will not be any good for your honor. So the Black Knight said, very well, I will ask you a riddle instead, as they did back in those days. King Arthur said, fine. And the Black Knight said, the riddle is this: what do women want? And King Arthur said, I can't possibly answer that now, but give me a year and a day and I'll return to this spot and I'll give you the answer. And the Black Knight said, very well, off you go. So King Arthur rode back to the castle in a bit of a panic and talked to his favorite nephew, Gawain, and said, Gawain, I have a serious problem. I have to figure out what women want. I have 1 year and 1 day to do this, or the Black Knight is going to come and kill me. And Gawain said, look, don't worry. We'll work this out. You go one way, I'll go the other. We'll ask every woman that we meet and we will circle back and we'll answer this question. So they did that. King Arthur went one way, Gawain went the other, and they started asking every woman that they met, what do you want? What do women want? And they had all kinds of different answers. Sometimes the women said, I want a man who will never scorn me. Sometimes the women said, I want a husband who is strong and handsome. Sometimes the women said, I want to be rich and I want to dress beautifully. And they got all kinds of different answers, but none of them really seemed like the right answer. So when there was only a month left, King Arthur was really starting to get worried. And one day he was riding out and he saw along the way a most loathsome hag. She was horribly, horribly ugly. And she stepped out in his path and she said, King Arthur, whether you choose to speak to me or not, your life is in my hands. And he said, very well, good lady. What is it that you wish to say to me? And she said, I know that you're searching for the answer to what women want, and I can tell you what that answer is, but you're going to have to grant me a boon in response. And he said, very well, what is it that you want? And she said, you must marry me to your nephew, Gawain. And Arthur thought, oh, this is not good. I really can't speak for Gawain on this matter, and she's pretty loathsome. So he said, lady, I cannot speak for Gawain on this, but I will certainly do whatever I can. And he rode back to the castle, had the chat with Gawain, and Gawain said, look, you have my loyalty. Be she a loathsome fiend from hell, I will marry her in order to serve you, my king. And King Arthur said, great. So he rode back to the lady and he said, lady, Gawain will indeed marry you, but maybe best if we just kind of keep this quiet. And she said, no, 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 I want the whole deal. I want the feast. I want the guests. I want it quite public. Fine. So he said, fair lady, tell me your name. And she said, it is the Lady Ragnell. So he said, Lady Ragnell, come with me to the castle and you will be wed to my nephew Gawain. So up she pops on the horse, off they ride, they have a huge wedding feast. Everyone is horrified at this woman's manners. She eats enough for 6 men. Her nails are 3 inches long and she's ripping up the food. It's not a pretty sight. Finally, she finishes eating and it's time for the bedding. So Gawain takes the Lady Ragnell upstairs and she looks at him to see if he's repulsed by her, and he isn't. He treats her with all courtesy and all affection. And she says, all right, Lord Gawain, kiss me. And he said, yes, Lady Ragnell, I will indeed. And so he comes towards her, ready to kiss her, and he turns away for a minute and turns back, and lo and behold, she's the most beautiful woman that he's ever seen. And he said, wow, Lady Ragnell, you look great. What happened? And she said, you must know that my brother, the Black Knight, put me under an evil spell. And the evil spell was set upon me when he took away my lands and he took away my treasure. And only if someone would be willing to give me the kiss of true love can I be restored to my former state. But there is still a problem. So you've broken half the enchantment, but there's still an issue. You can choose. I can either be fair by day and foul by night, or I can be foul by day and fair by night. And Gawain said, that's a hard one. He said, I would struggle either way, to be honest, to make that choice, to have you fair at night and foul in the day, or the other way around. He said, look, I'm going to have to just leave this with you. Whatever you would rather, you're my wife, and I will respect that choice. And she said, kind and gracious knight, you have now broken the spell because you have given me what it is that all women want. And he said, what is that? And she said, sovereignty. Sovereignty. The respect and the power to do as I choose. And that is what all women want. So the enchantment was broken. Lady Ragnar was fair by both day and night, and she and Gawain married and lived happily ever after. Now that's an interesting story, isn't it? And when I read that story, I started thinking about that word, sovereignty. That's not a word that you hear a lot. That's not a word that's in common use. That's not a word that we throw around. So I decided to look it up and see what it actually meant. And I wrote down some notes. Sovereignty, the full right and power of a governing body over itself without any interference from outside sources or bodies. Now, really, as women running our own business, isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we're doing here? The right to make our own decisions, the right to take our own risks, for good or for bad, to succeed or to fail. The right to have some control over our own lives, to have some say over how we make a living, the right to dictate our own hours and make our own decisions. Sovereignty. You are sovereign. You're sovereign in your own kitchen. You're sovereign in your own home. You're sovereign at your own table. And you are sovereign in your own business. You here are sovereign. And that's why it's worth doing what we do. That's why it's worth crawling through all of those days when you feel like you are chewing solid rock and throwing up gravel. And I know, because I've been there. Because when we run our own businesses, we are sovereign. So have a think about that today and exercise your right of sovereignty.